I'm going to let I guess Georgia introduce herself real quick, and then Jason and Aaron, they're kind of the folks that have been helping us put this together. Georgia, why don't you go first?
Yeah, thanks, Ted. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Georgia Bush. I am the coastal specialist in the Southeast region for the North Carolina Coastal Federation. You all are likely here because you've already received an email from me or some kind of notice about this webinar series leading up to the workshop. So we're very excited to see all of you. Please feel free to continue communicating with me for any questions you might have and anything else we can do for you throughout this process. I'll popcorn over to Jason.
All right, good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. My name is Jason Peters. I'm with the North Carolina Division of Marine Fisheries. I'm sort of oversee the artificial reef program, the oyster sanctuary program, and our culture planting program here in North Carolina. We're longtime collaborators and partners with the Coastal Federation, and you know, much of this discussion is born of really earlier discussions with the Coastal Federation. Just sort of discussing ways that we can engage other folks around the country in ways that they do things. So I'm looking forward to the discussion today, and then future webinars and the REG conference in Louisiana in December. So thank you very much.
And I'll just pop on and say a quick hello as well. My name's Erin Fleckenstein. I'm also with the North Carolina Coastal Federation, and I help to oversee and implement the statewide Oyster Blueprint, which is our statewide strategic document that helps to guide Coastal Federation and our partners, which of course DMF is a major partner in implementing our oyster restoration and protection efforts, which includes habitat management, water quality protection and improvement, wild harvest, oyster aquaculture, and many other things. So we're excited to have you here. This is one of the major steps that we had outlined and actions that we had outlined in that strategic plan, was working to create sort of a community of practice around our habitat management efforts and learning from other states and programs. So we're excited that Division of Marine Fisheries is kicking off this webinar, and we look forward to learning from you all over the next couple of weeks and months. Thank you.
Thank you all. And it's definitely a joint project between the Coastal Federation. We are a nonprofit conservation organization focused on marine debris, oysters, living shorelines, water quality, coastal management issues along the coast. And as Jason said, we've had a long partnership with the Division of Marine Fisheries working on oysters for all the things they do in terms of ecosystem services and economic services for the state. And kind of where this came from is, as Jason and Aaron both mentioned, we have our oyster blueprint, which has been in place for a long time. We've developed a number of different initiatives out of that oyster blueprint. And one of the ones, the key ones in the state that North Carolina has been working on for many years is essentially a culture planting program. And that is where the state puts culture material out into areas which are open to harvest. And one of our goals through our blueprint was to kind of work with the Division of Marine Fisheries to evaluate that program. And they're doing a lot of self-evaluation of their program, looking at how they put the material out, monitoring it, and looking at ways to make sure they're using every resource as efficiently as possible. And as kind of that self-evaluation, and we started thinking, well, I'm sure other states and other programs have done this as well. What can we learn from them? And I want to thank the Nature Conservancy and the Pew Charitable Trust, because they've done a lot of work in terms of providing contacts and linking programs on this issue for a number of years. And they've helped us identify you all as potential stakeholders in this process. And so we are not trying to reinvent the wheel, because there's some great initiatives out there that people are working through from state to state. This is kind of what we're trying to do, is focus this effort on really getting a sense of how areas that are open for harvest, how we're managing those in terms of trying to essentially replenish them, and looking to see, what other programs are happening. That's kind of one goal, so that we can kind of share lessons learned, monitoring parameters, resources, things like that, together with trying to establish a network. When we've been trying to sort of identify you all through different processes for about 3 years, and people change positions or leave or programs change. And so the idea was also established or put forth by Division of Marine Fisheries to essentially come up with a network of people like yourselves who are doing this work and actually maintain that network of contacts, so that if I want to call somebody in Florida because I have a question about something happening here in North Carolina, I can do that readily, or in New Hampshire or wherever, Louisiana, and you all can do the same. So we're trying to do two things at once. One is to help determine ways that we can evaluate and improve and maintain our programs. And the second part is to try to take a lot of the work that's been done before in terms of cataloging programs, what people are doing, and make that kind of a living, to somewhat degree, a living catalog for all of us that we can use and update as we move forward. So that's kind of where this is coming from. And we're hoping that you all can provide us with some guidance and suggestions. Like I said, we do not want to reinvent the wheel here. We're trying to keep this somewhat focused. There's the International Shellfish Restoration Conference. There's great meetings that do look at the broad work that's done with oysters. So we're kind of trying to do a little bit of a niche work here with this Culch effort. And each state defines kind of how they're working in their programs differently. So that's one of the things we want to address. So that's kind of just wanted to give you a little bit of a background of where we're coming from. Today is an informal sort of kickoff of the process. And so this is just a way for us to tell you what we're thinking and get your all's input to see if you would like to be part of it, suggestions, and that's kind of where we are. So, feel free to ask questions in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask a question, and we'll try to answer it as best we can. So with that, I guess I'll just open it up if anybody has any questions or comments based on that kind of introduction. And feel free to comment in the chat if that's easier, since we have such a big group here. All right. Well, seeing none, Jason, I guess I'll ask you, in terms of your perspective as being a state program, if you can kind of give maybe what you're thinking in terms of what are you hoping to gain from this effort?
Sure, thanks, Ted. So I'm sure most people on here have heard, the definition of insanity a bit. And so we've been doing culch planting in some form or fashion here in North Carolina since the early 1900s, documented culch planting. And so, we're well over, just over 100 years now of doing that. And of course, we've been quite successful in many ways. And in other ways, we see opportunity to be more successful. And so we don't want to necessarily continue what we've been doing year after year if there are ways to improve. And so trying to look outside of our sort of narrow lens, narrow window that we've been looking through for 100 years, we're really interested in reaching out to other folks. And this kind of idea to gather individuals from other states and get their perspectives came from a little bit different hat that I wear in the artificial reef program. And so the artificial reef program, various states have individual representatives, reef coordinators, if you will, that meet every single year to discuss what they accomplished, what they didn't accomplish, different ways of doing things, share sort of data perhaps, or ongoing research, maybe some lessons learned, resources that they're utilizing to accomplish their jobs, and really it's a boots on the ground type of focus with that meeting. How do we apply the research to make something happen, or how do we leverage resources or funding, or how can we benefit from, you know, adjacent states, for example? How can they work together to accomplish a common goal? And that's where I think a group like this can really do a lot of good work. I know, like Ted said, there are a number of different regional groups that are discussing these things, but I think expanding it beyond just regions, say East Coast versus Gulf Coast versus West, or what have you. I think if we look bigger picture, there's a lot of opportunity to learn and benefit. So from our perspective, that's kind of where we're coming from. We're welcoming some sort of open and frank communication. And, you know, like I said, we're welcoming any kind of thoughts that you might have. So.
Thanks, Jason. And Ty Lindsay, let you go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, Ty Lindsay with Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. I mean, I can say honestly, I don't get excited about meetings, but this one, when I saw this come across, I was very excited. I've always felt like we're on an island out here with our projects. I mean, so I strongly support this. It is a very welcome opportunity because I don't even know the players from the other states. This is really important now when we're spending so much, well, things cost so much. A coach plant for us used to cost $1 million for 300 acres. And now, and this year and last, we're paying about $2.5 million for 200. And, you know, so now it's helpful to have this, to develop this group that you can bounce ideas off. And it's like, it used to be for us, you know, build it and they will come. And now it's $2.5 million and you're building it and crossing your fingers. So anyway, I just wanted to say I greatly appreciate this. I think if I had more gumption, I would have started it 10 years ago, but I do appreciate y'all creating this. So.
Thank you, Ty. Does anybody else have any comments or questions at this point? Feel free to jump in.
And I'll just echo what Ty said. I think we've got similar feelings here in North Carolina, where we feel like we're out on an island, and we have these discussions. Well, you know, Virginia's doing it this way, or Maryland's doing it that way, but we really haven't spoken to those people. It's all kind of hearsay, and so I think it's really important to just get everybody in the same room and really find out for sure how things are going, and if there's ways that we can do things better. So, thanks, Ty. I appreciate your enthusiasm.
Bose, go ahead and
yeah, Bose here. It's interesting. This is it's kind of timely, I think. We are looking to bring ICSR, the International Conference on Shellfish Restoration, back to the US. It's kind of had the wind taken out of the sails a bit in the US because it had been run by North Carolina Sea Grant for a while. Peter Kingsley Smith's on this call as well. We're kind of looking to have that back in the US next year, hopefully. As always, looking for funding to help run that. But that's, you know, been targeted at very much this kind of level of practitioner interaction. That's one comment that I wanted to slot in. The other one is that this kind of network is something that's popped up and disappeared several times over the last kind of 15 years. And I think it is valuable. I know that it's valuable. The value of these networks really is apparent. They're also a little difficult to maintain. So just kind of thinking about that into the future, it does require some capacity from somebody, which always means funding, and that's an issue. But it's a fantastic initiative, so happy to support.
Thank you, Bose. Yeah, we definitely want to acknowledge there's been a lot of wonderful work. Nature Conservancy did a survey of programs a number of years ago that gave kind of what permits, what programs are available in the different states, which has been very valuable. The International Conference on Shellfish Restoration is incredibly valuable. And South Carolina has been kind enough to host that for many years. So we appreciate all those efforts. And Lauren Cohen established the Oyster Work Group, looked at a monitoring network in 2004. And they've maintained that website, which has been incredibly valuable, but it's hard to do. So like Bo said, we definitely recognize that. And the Coastal Federation feel like this is something fairly important. And so we'd like to, as a nonprofit, support this as much as we can for as long as we can. And so we recognize that people are going to put time and effort into this. We don't want it to go away. So we understand the challenges, and we're looking for, we don't know all the answers. So we're definitely looking for your all suggestions in terms of how to either, merge this into existing initiatives, or whether this can exist on its own. So this is kind of the infancy, and we definitely want to see it through, but we're also really hoping for your all's guidance as we do that. Let's see, I don't see any other raised hands. So the kind of the nuts and bolts of this, what we were thinking is that we identified the Restore America's Estuary Summit that's going to be held in New Orleans as a way to potentially have people that might be coming to that meeting already, as a way to have an in-person gathering. And so we kind of identified that first, and then we thought we're going to have a short amount of time at that summit. So is there a way that we can get some basic program information from each of us beforehand, so that we're not using our very valuable time just kind of reporting out? We'd like to have the time that we are actually in person, helping to develop discussions and answer questions. So it's more of a engaging event versus just a report out. So that's kind of where we came up with the idea of the seminars beforehand. So this is kind of the first one to say, hello, this is who we are, this is what we're thinking. And then ideally, we've set up basically a series of Thursdays. Right now we have 3 set aside, where we would invite each program to provide a very short summary of this is what we're doing. And there's some questions we'll talk about, so that we can get and start cataloging all that information that you all have. And that way, when we come to the Ray Summit, those of you that are able to participate, we would have that already in our hands and digesting, and then start answering some of the hard questions and looking at ways to really cement this network moving forward. So that's kind of what we are thinking. With the Ray Summit, we've been working with them. We have a room set aside for us on that Tuesday from 10:30 to 1:45 for us to work. They are going to, we believe we can live stream the event. We may not be able to have interaction, but for those of you not able to come in person, you will at least be able to hear and see what we're talking about. For those of you that do want to, are able to attend, the early bird rate for registration ends tomorrow. And you can register either for the whole summit, or if you're just coming for a day, we'll have our workshop on Tuesday. There are some other great oyster presentations and seminars at Restore America's Estuary. So it certainly wouldn't be a waste to attend the conference, as well as lots of other exciting things. So that's kind of what we're thinking. And with the regional seminars, we kind of wanted to group it by region, but we recognize everyone's time is very tight and scheduling. So we may just have to do it according to when people are available. So that's kind of the framework of where we're trying to move forward from. And then, is there anybody else that has any questions or about that before I move into sort of these questions that we want to ask? All right. So we emailed you the agenda for today, and I'm just going to share my screen real quickly with that. Okay, so these are kind of the questions we're interested in posing to you all, and seeing if each program can essentially provide this kind of summary information, whether it's through the seminar series that we're hoping to have beforehand, or whether it's, we can't attend the seminar, but here's the most recent presentation I gave on this, and you can share it that way. So hopefully everybody can still see that. So kind of where we're focused on is, one is kind of your state's oyster population and harvest levels. So we recognize that some states have very limited wild harvest. Some have no wild harvest. Some are predominantly aquaculture. So we're trying to get a sense of, when you're thinking about your restoration, your enhancement efforts, what are you dealing with? And so any information you can provide on your oyster harvest trends. And then if you have numbers on how much is coming in from, how many bushels or pounds of meat are coming to dock from the wild harvest versus farmed oysters. If you have an idea of if you have quantified acres available, that are for public access for harvest. And then, does your state have a stock assessment? In North Carolina, we are currently working with numerous partners, or Nature Conservancy, NC State, and DMF are working together with others to produce a method for stock assessment for oysters in North Carolina. So have you already done that in your state, or are you undertaking that? So that's kind of that one focus area. The next are what we kind of are talking about a lot today is, what is your enhancement or restoration program? Are you building reefs that are open to harvest? And are you building sanctuary reefs that are not open to harvest? They're there for ecosystem services or brood stock or something like that. And then, are you using just state funds through your legislature, or is it grant funding? How much of each are you using? And then, what are you using? As Ty mentioned, materials are getting incredibly expensive. We're all battling for the same shell from state to state, and so we want to get a sense of what everyone's using and what their source is. You don't have to give up your, not the name of your shucking house, because then everybody will try to rate it. But the name, where you're getting it from. Are you getting it from shucking houses? Are you getting it from quarries? Where's your reef material coming from? And then, what is your design? Are you building it? Of course, depends on your system that you're working with, whether it's intertidal or subtidal, shallow subtidal. But are you, how thick is the shell layer are you putting out there, depending on, or moral or reef dome, depending on if it's a sanctuary or if a harvest area. And are you using spat set on shell or seed oysters or anything like that? Or are you just building it and let them come? If you're using spat, where does it come from? Do you have a state hatchery or commercial hatchery? Those are kind of things that we're asking for. And then one of the things we're running up against is limitations on how much material can be put out each year. If you're using your state resources, do you have enough resources to put out all the material? Or if you had more barges, more front end loaders, more staff, could you do more? Or are you using commercial fishers in small projects, or contractors in large projects? Hiring somebody, a barge company, to put out your material for you, whether it's sanctuary, or harvest reefs. Then the third area we're looking at is kind of how are you managing these? You know, do you have triggers? Are you relying on your own monitoring? Are you relying on the stakeholders to provide that information to you? You know, how do you control access to the different reefs? Like, do you have shellfish management areas that are accessed by certain harvesters on certain days, things like that? And then what kind of management mechanisms do you use? You know, a sanctuary status, a shellfish management area, rotational harvest area, research sanctuary, those kind of tools that you use to manage those sites. And then the last kind of focus area are, you know, how are you monitoring? Are you monitoring your reefs that you're doing for that are in wild harvest areas? How are you monitoring your protected areas, your sanctuaries? You know, are you using areas that are closed to shellfish because of water quality problems for restoration? And then have you had to do any kind of analysis on, you know, you're spending, for every $1 you spend putting material in the water, you get a $4 return. That was a report that was generated here in North Carolina. So have you had to do that, and have you, you know, are you interested in doing something like that to help use it to generate more support and more funding for your programs? And then lessons learned, that's a big part. You know, we're trying to share, you know, all these things that we've learned through adaptive management, and you know, saying to yourself, I'm never gonna do that again. You know, those are things that the more of us that know that, the more effective we can be together. And then finally, you know, hopefully within these kind of questions and subject areas, we've addressed kind of what are the key components of your program. But are there things that you're looking at this list and saying, none of this is applicable to me, or I've got different things that I'm really concerned about? We want to get that from you. So these are kind of what we're hoping to get from each program that is able to, during these seminars before we get to the Ray Summit, so that we can use that time to discuss kind of what information you've provided. So I'm going to pause there and see if anybody, or if Jason, you want to jump in, or Aaron, or Georgia, and just hit anything that I missed there.
I think that's a great starting list, and I'll just sort of reiterate that last point is, if you know there's anything else after going through these questions, anything else that anybody wants to provide that's relevant to their program, those are pieces of information we really want to capture. One thing that I noticed that wasn't necessarily listed in here is sort of public engagement, or how well the various programs are received by the public in your area. We sort of have mixed reviews sometimes in our area, depending on user groups, and that might be interesting information to capture as well. So.
And the only other thing that I was going to add, and I don't know that we have a fantastic process for doing this, but you know, as we move into these seminars by state, we are looking for just maybe one person to be presenting out on the state programs. And so there could be a variety of nonprofits or universities or the state that are involved in these restoration efforts, but we'd be looking for the lead agency or entity within each state to be making these presentations. So we aren't necessarily having 3 or 4 presenters for each state.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron.
Ted, I don't know if we need to get into details, but like definition of farmed oysters, are we talking about alternative oyster culture, non-traditional stuff? Are you talking about private leases, or anything that the fisherman builds? You know, like, wasn't sure what was meant by farmed.
Yeah, thanks, Ty. That's a good question, and that's kind of some of the things we're addressing is each state has different definitions for different things. So for us, we were thinking of leased areas. And so we will definitely qualify that. Areas that are leased by a farmer who is growing either on bottom or off bottom oyster culture.
And if I may, the return on investment, we actually, one of our former oyster program managers, probably 10 years ago or so, did a study on return on investment, but the return on investment was included, it went all the way out to like how much taxes the product may get after it gets on the market. And, you know, that was complicated. And like I say, 10 years ago, he's still here, but he doesn't do oysters. But anyway, when you talk about return on investment, to me, that it can end pretty quick or it can go on a long way when you're talking about a return on investment to who. There's really no return on investment, honestly, directly to the department, other than you might could argue, you know, more licenses are sold or something to fish the grounds, but I doubt that's really anything significant. Anyway, I was just not so much a question, I apologize, but more of like a statement of warning. It can be what you get on return investment. It could be wild from depending how you want to structure that report. So.
Okay. Thank you. That's, again, these are all, you know, great comments, because these are things that we don't are helpful in us considering kind of how we are looking at our program in comparison to other programs. So and Carolina, thank you for that addition in terms of the oyster harvest closure, and we'll definitely add that. So thanks for putting that in the chat. You know, feel free to add other questions to the chat. And again, we're not, I know a lot of you all have answered these questions before. We all get contacted by other states asking us for information on our programs, or people, you know, interns doing research. And so we don't want you to have to reinvent or redo this. It's like a college application that each college asks the question slightly different. So you have to rewrite everything the same way. We're hoping that this is fairly readily available information for you. We're not looking for, you know, a thesis. We're just trying to get some basic information from you all, so that as we kind of ask questions about some of these areas, you know, we understand some of the things that you're dealing with, some of the constraints or some of the opportunities, so that we can look at that as ways that kind of assess how you're dealing with them, and are there lessons that learned there that we can apply in our program, or you can apply in your program from other states. And, you know, feel free, you've got our emails, Georgia and has been emailing everybody. So feel free, if you feel more comfortable just emailing or commenting on the list from the agenda, you can do that. So I'm going to stop sharing and my screen. And Georgia, we kind of wanted to talk about kind of the seminar schedule and kind of get a sense of what people are interested in doing. Are you okay leading that part of the discussion?
Yeah, of course. So I put just a little comment in the chat already, but we have webinar time period set aside for this exact time slot, 2 to 3:30 on Thursday afternoons for October 13th, October 20th, and November 3rd. So as we were kind of hoping to have everybody regionally organized, it might not work that your schedule gives you availability on that specific day. So if you're interested in sharing with us any of those days, let us know. And if we don't have anybody interested, we might find some other topics to fill the webinar time slot with, or just move on to the next the next week. If you have any other questions about sharing, or if you're not sure you can be the one to present your information, but you want the information shared with this group, we can come up with another way to get everything out to everybody as well. So I would leave it up to, again, all of you. The value here for us is to hear back from you and to hear what would be meaningful time spent for you. So any feedback or other questions are welcome.
Can I hop in here? This is Craig Tomlin from New Jersey.
Hey,
Go right
Craig.
ahead.
So I saw the list of, actually, first off, I like the idea of getting everybody together here. This is awesome for me. I've talked to a couple of you guys before, but this is pretty good to get everybody together. So thank you. The second part is I saw the list there, and I'm more than willing to give a presentation. I was just wondering if you would like all that information in a presentation so I can kind of give all that information and then get some feedback. Is that what you guys are looking for?
Yes, essentially trying to get that information and then feedback, definitely, but also using that kind of when we are meeting, once we kind of have everybody's information, when we're meeting in December, hopefully in person, then that would be kind of the opportunity for people to sort of say, well, I see that you're doing this. We're going to have sort of subject areas at that workshop where we'll try to delve into more detail. But yeah, we're definitely going to have feedback opportunities during that time after you present.
Okay. I was just trying to figure out what we wanted in the presentations before then, and so I can put something together.
Okay.
Ted, correct me on this, but I sort of envision the presentations as really just an explanation of what's going on in your state. What are you doing? How do you define things, while also trying to answer some of those questions that are listed in there. And then the goal, once again, being when we get together in December, to sort of identify where there's overlap and what we're doing, similarities per se, or differences, and then we can discuss those similarities and differences among programs or states or between states, and sort of build from there. But that's sort of what I envision in a presentation is, hey, I'm Jason from North Carolina. Here's what we do here.
Yep. Lauren, did you have a question? You're still on. Here you go.
Yes, thank you. So I wanted to just echo what I'm hearing from others about, the appreciation for hosting this type of group. I think, in Texas, so I'm with TNC Texas. I am the Resilient Coast Program Director for Texas. And I wear many hats, but more recently, I'm diving really deep into oyster restoration and management, because of what's happening in the state right now. And so I just appreciate having these types of communities come together. We have working groups in Texas. There are working groups in the Gulf, but I find myself looking to what has happened in other states like Maryland, especially regarding stakeholder engagement processes and working with oyster fishers. And so I think one thing that I would like to see listed on maybe under management is just, like the stakeholder, and if there have been any stakeholder engagement processes, if there's ongoing engagement with oyster fishers or restoration practitioners, like, and what that looks like in the different states, and lessons learned from those types of experiences as well.
Yeah, thank you. That is great. Any other, I guess, questions or comments? And I think what we might try to do, and Georgia, correct me if I'm wrong, but is the easiest thing to send out essentially time slots for each sort of a Google form, time slots, and people can sign up when they're available, essentially.
Absolutely. I think as we will get interest from anybody, like I just got a message from Eric saying, I think everybody can see this. Eric's available on November 3rd. So we'll just slot Eric for the first time period for November 3rd, and we'll just kind of fill in as we get that interest. So we'll communicate that out to everybody.
Okay.
And if y'all have a particular interest in, I can only be there on the 13th, but I can't be there till 2:45, you know, we can work that out as well. So feel free to be as specific as possible for your schedule as it allows.
And we'll record each of these. Sorry, Jason, I jumped on you. We'll record each of these and provide essentially summaries. And if people are willing to share their presentations, again, we'll catalog that. We're still trying to figure out, you know, the best way to do that, so that everybody has access to these things. And you know, there's existing sites out there like the Oyster Workgroup site that Dr. Cohen started. So, you know, looking at whether we can house those in those existing sites, or what the best way is to do this. But we will definitely share everything that you all provide us, so that if you can't participate in everything, you'll still have access to what we can share with you.
Yeah, it's exactly what I was going to suggest, Ted, is some kind of recording. And I kind of envision that as really the first product of all of this, so just a portfolio of presentations explaining what the various states programs are. So if nothing else, we can all go home with that and be able to refer to what other states are doing as of, you know, fall of 2022.
Yep. So any other comments or questions from anybody? Go ahead, Bose.
Yeah, it kind of, I'm just, and I jumped on a few minutes late, so I might have missed something at the beginning here, but it strikes me that you're looking to build up a catalog of what's happening by state. And I'm not sure if all of the coastal states are actually included in the group you've got here. I don't know if you are wanting to build this group out, and if so, I think actually just more than an email with email addresses, a list of those people you've got and their associations might be helpful, so that we know where the gaps are.
Definitely, yeah, we can do that. Aaron worked a lot with our contacts at Pew, and also in your group, Bose, the Nature Conservancy, and you all provide us a lot of contacts. So we have a list, and it's a pretty comprehensive list, but we will definitely make that shareable as part of this catalog, so you can see who's been invited. A lot of you all provided additional contacts for us when Georgia contacted you initially. But yes, we would like to get every state involved, and I believe we had invitations to every state. But if we missed anybody, yeah, we'd love to get that. So we'll make that shareable before the first seminar, so that everybody can see that.
Yeah, we had everyone from Maine to Texas with any kind of oyster restoration or farming or harvest programs that Pew helped us identify. We didn't include the West Coast states. So if that's an oversight and we need to include them, we can certainly go back to that, but we were figuring we'd be focusing on the Eastern oyster, so stuck to the East Coast.
All right, any other questions anybody has or comments?
Yeah, I'll just add that especially if you feel like anybody is missing from the invitations or communications throughout this network so far, please feel free to send them our way, and we'll make sure that they're included throughout the discourse.
But look for an email from Georgia soon, just with, again, just a reminder of those dates and a way to sign up for the date and time that works for you. And then again, we'll make that list shareable so that you all can see who's on that list, and you know, can let us know that we're missing somebody, or if there's a correction that needs to happen, you can certainly do that. Jason or Aaron, do you all have anything else to add?
No, I just really appreciate everyone's participation and enthusiasm. Never really know how these things are going to be received, and it sounds like at least most of you are excited about what we got going on. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, we don't want to waste anybody's time. So, you know, we appreciate you all just listening and considering whether you want to be part of this. And again, if you have suggestions or resources, feel free to send them our way so that we can make this the most efficient use of your time and the most beneficial for everybody. So we don't want to leave people out, and we don't want to kind of hash over the same things that we've been hashing over on in different contexts. So we're looking to really make this a good product and a good network and resource for you all for many years to come. All right, well, I know everyone is very busy. And again, we really thank those of you that have been affected by Hurricane Ian for taking the time out of a busy schedule to join us today. And we definitely send our thoughts and good wishes your way for complete recovery soon. I know it's going to be hard, but thank you. So thank you all very much on behalf of the Coastal Federation and North Carolina Division of Marine Fisheries for joining us. And we'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you all.
Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. All right, I'm going to stop our recording, but I guess we can hang out for a minute if we want to talk about anything else.